Hey, what's going on, guys? You're listening to The Engine on YouTube. Johnny Fogel, Nick Freeman, Nick Falk. We're on to the fourth episode of this series. Best power forwards in the NBA. Quickly, if you didn't see the last video, I might announce that I'm going to be shaving my head once we get to 200 subscribers. But I digress. Moving on, we're going to introduce our individual lists. As we said in previous videos, we did it with point guards, shooting guards, small forwards. We have our own individual lists, and then we have our combined lists. And then
each list is based off just this year's production. We use Basketball Reference for positions. So, for example, Jason Tatum, even though a lot of people classify him as a small forward, since they have Gordon Hayward and Jaylen Brown, he's the power forward on this list, as well as Anthony Davis. Even though they're different players, they make this power forward list. So, starting it out, here are our individual lists.
All right, so I'm going to be starting it off with my list. We're going to go 10-1. At 10, I've got Danilo Gallinari. At 9, I've got John Collins. At 8, I've got Zion. At 7, I've got Kristaps Porzingis. At 6, I've got Bam Adebayo. 5, I've got Domantas Sabonis. 4, Jason Tatum. 3, Pascal Siakam. 2, Anthony Davis. And 1, I've got Giannis Antetokounmpo.
All right, so 10, I have Gallinari. 9, I have John Collins. 8, I have Kristaps Porzingis. 7, I have Sabonis. 6, I have Zion. 5, I have Bam Adebayo. 4, I have Pascal Siakam. 3, I have Jason Tatum. And 2 and 1 is Anthony Davis and Giannis.
For me, I got 10, Zion Williamson. 9, Danilo Gallinari. 8, John Collins. 7, Domantas Sabonis. 6, Kristaps Porzingis. 5, Bam Adebayo. 4, Pascal Siakam. 3, Jason Tatum. 2, Anthony Davis. And 1, Giannis Antetokounmpo. And then in our combined list, starting it out, at number 10, Danilo Gallinari, I got from the Oklahoma City Thunder. He's putting up 19 a game. Pretty good rebounder. He's an underrated scorer. He's actually shooting over 40% from three, which is really impressive. Similar to what we were talking about with Bojan Bogdanovic yesterday, I feel like he's another guy that any team wants. He's a lights-out shooter. He brings you easy buckets. He doesn't necessarily need to be the number one option, but he's definitely a really solid role player and just can give you 20 points a night.
Yeah, he's pretty solid. I saw the over 40% from three. That's what really made him put me in this list. And he's an efficient scorer, putting up 19 a game. A really high volume 3-point shooter. So, as you said, any team would want that kind of player.
I really like Gallinari, and I like putting him at this spot. He's becoming a little more consistent, but I'm looking for a little more consistency. He has some games where he's not as good as you'd like him to be. But usually when you sign him, you know exactly what you're going to get, and you know that he's going to make your team better for the most part. And I really just like Gallinari. He's a nice little piece, and he's a good piece of this Thunder team.
Yeah, next from the Atlanta Hawks, John Collins. Collins, really good scorer. He's put up over 21 a game, 10 rebounds. He was suspended this season, which probably has knocked him down a little on this list. But recently, especially, he's been great. He's shoot the three. He averaged 25 a month in February, which is super impressive. Perfect piece next to Trae Young. There is that issue, though. He doesn't really defend.
Yeah, for sure. That's it. I mean, I was really considering putting Montrezl Harrell over him because he's a liability on defense, and he should be better on defense. He's 6'10". He's really athletic, so that bothers me about him. But, he is a pretty good scorer, but it is also on a bad team, so you have to factor that in.
He's a classic 2010 player. I mean, he's great in the pick and roll, and he's a great piece with Trae Young, like you said earlier, Nick. But I agree with you. He doesn't defend that well, but I can't put Montrezl Harrell over him, especially when Montrezl Harrell isn't starting.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's better players on that team, talent-wise. But I just think what John Collins brings to the table, and he still has a lot of potential. Like Montrezl Harrell has, I think, reached his peak potential in my opinion. And I think John Collins is going to continue to grow and develop into a better player.
I think if Montrezl Harrell was starting, that box score would look a lot different. That's just my fun of Montrezl Harrell.
I do think Collins still has a lot more upside, though. And I think
I agree with that.
He's been playing great recently, and I think his defensive ability, now that they brought in Capella, will probably help having a good defensive center next to him.
That's definitely true. All right, number 8, we have Zion Williamson. So with Zion, I put him at number 6 on my list over Sabonis. His plus minus in the Pelicans is insane. I think he's averaging 24 in the 19 games that he played. So obviously, literally everyone was watching every single play he made because it was on ESPN every night. But he's actually a really good player. He's a good defender. He's a great playmaker. That's what really, something I didn't know about his game coming out of Duke. But other than that, I mean, it's Zion. We know he's going to be great.
You talk about players that like live up to the hype. Like he has, not knock on wood, not jinxing anything, but he has lived up to the hype. He's shooting 24 points a game, 60 or 59% from the field goal, and what is that? 46% three-point shooter. Like, where is this coming from? Zion's just one of the most efficient players, and I think some stat he's scoring or rebounding on 79% of the times he touches the ball. He's an unprecedented basketball player, and he's the future of the NBA. He's already a superstar.
Plus, he's still kind of on a minutes restriction, so the stats are even more impressive. I had him at number 10. I'm not even going to argue with Nick having him at number 6. It was solely based off the fact that he hasn't even played 20 games. But I do think he's actually a better player than some of these guys on this list. The volume isn't really there. So personally, I had him below some of these guys, but I still think Zion is going to be for sure a superstar if he can stay healthy. There needs to be some conditioning worries, but you've seen what you get, and he's an athletic specimen who's going to do really well in the NBA if he stays healthy.
Yeah.
Moving on to number 7, we've got Kristaps Porzingis coming off of an injury, but he's still putting up 19 points a game and just around 10 rebounds. Really impressive season, even in the shadow of Luka Doncic at this point, who's having an unbelievable breakout year. I've been impressed by Kristaps Porzingis not only coming off of an injury, but being in the secondary role, which he usually wasn't accustomed to on the Knicks.
Yeah, for sure. I think he slowed down a little bit at the beginning of the year. He was a little underwhelming. But towards the end of this season, if it does not continue, he started to pick it up a bit. He fits really well with Luka Doncic, actually. They're both foreign players, so I guess they like each other, apparently. And,
that's how it works.
Yeah.
Yeah. Obviously, when you're 7'3", coming off an ACL injury is just a huge recovery. So he did have a very slow start to the season. But recently he's picked it up, and since his slow start, it's been very under the radar. Last month he put up 25 a game. He's been shooting the ball really well, almost 40% from 3. And he's just slowly, as the season has went on, he's shown back to that superstar form that he showed at the beginning of the season with the Knicks before his ACL injury. So I'm really high on Kristaps Porzingis. I actually had him above Sabonis. And
I wouldn't say he was back to his superstar form, but he's fitting him well with the Mavericks.
He has the flashes.
Yeah.
But he's not a superstar. I get it. And then next, another foreign big man at number 6, Domantas Sabonis. He's putting up 18.5, 12.5, and 5. Really good distributor for a big man. He's a great post player, but generally I'm pretty low on him. I don't really like him defensively, and he just does not have a jump shot.
Yeah. Johnny, you're pretty high on Sabonis. What do you think about this?
I like Sabonis. I mean, he's not his best field goal percentage. He actually moved down 5% from last year. He was shooting 59 comparatively to 54. But I like Sabonis. His role was definitely increased this year when Oladipo was hurt. And he's turned into an all-star. Like, when the lights were shining on him, he still played well. He actually played his best season to date, even though his field goal percentage was lower. But he's still playing really well. I like him. I think you guys aren't giving him enough credit. I mean, it's really hard to become an all-star, especially considering he's really boring. I can give you that. He's a very boring, dull basketball player, but he's still putting up a really good stat line. And I think this isn't the best. This is not the best is yet to come.
I mean, he's putting up 19 a game, and they're all from the post, and the post game is not really important in the NBA anymore. So that's another reason why I had him a little farther down my list. The thing that is really good about him is his playmaking. He's averaging about 5 assists, which is really good for a big man. But it's not the same as like Jokic. Like Jokic can like run the pick and roll and, make some really flashy passes. Sabonis just seems a little like a robot.
Yeah, he's kind of bland for sure. Also, when you're going back to that all-star label, I personally don't think he should have been an all-star. I think it happened to do with the East just not having any very good big men. And when you consider it, Sabonis is that team's power forward. He might be having some smaller guys guarding him a lot of the time. And when your game's so reliant on that post play, having a guy like Miles Turner who's able to also play in the post and also go out to the three, have a well-spread offense helps so much. And being on that Pacers team, since he has the opportunity to be the guy, has really benefited him. I don't really consider him to be that all-star level player, though.
Yeah, also considering the all-star reserves are chosen by the coaches, they obviously value winning teams. That's probably one of the reasons Bradley Beal wasn't on the team, but he definitely should have been on the team over Sabonis.
Yeah, different position, but true.
All right,
Yeah.
moving on to, what is that, number 5? Got Bam Adebayo, another all-star. Seems like he's more deserving of this all-star spot. I think you guys are going to agree with that. Respectable 16, 10, and 5 stat line, but Bam Adebayo, the thing with him comparatively to Domantas Sabonis, he's bringing it defensively, and Jimmy Butler's definitely been helping out a lot, like we talked about yesterday on a small forward video. Go check that out. But Bam Adebayo, my one concern with him is that he just really can't shoot, but it's not really part of his game, so it doesn't seem like that much to be concerned about.
He's not an awful shooter. He can shoot, but, it's not really that much of a threat. We go back to the playmaking again. He can run the floor. He can play make. That's the difference. I think he can also run the floor, throw down dunks, lobs, but he's not as great of a playmaker, and he can actually step outside in the perimeter and defend the pick and roll and come inside and get some blocks.
Yeah, him and Butler are a perfect duo there, especially on the pick and roll. Both great defenders. He's a key part of this team. He's actually my most improved player this season. His stat line has went up from 9, 7, and 2 last year to, as Johnny said, 16, 10, and 5. He's a great passer, actually a pretty good ball handler, which is something very rare from big men. And just that athleticism, you see he's starting to grow into his body. I do think he has superstar potential, unlike Sabonis. What do you guys think? Do you think he could be a superstar?
Yeah, I mean, the height definitely limits him. Being 6'9" and doing those things is definitely going to be harder to become someone like Giannis because, he's not quite as big and his wingspan isn't insanely huge, and he doesn't have that shot and that dunking ability from across the court. So, I think he's more of a big man, but he's a little bit smaller, which holds him back.
I think very rarely will you find a Kentucky player becoming a superstar. Very rarely. I mean, John Wall kind of, Anthony Davis obviously is a superstar, but it's very rare when you get players like this coming out of Kentucky. And I think Bam Adebayo has been one of the great surprises of the NBA season, not only this year, but he will be for the next following 10 years. I don't know if he's going to turn into a superstar, but he's going to be a player that, like we've talked about with like Danilo Gallinari, he's a player that every team would like to have. He makes their team better.
Adebayo, going back to the Kentucky thing, he wasn't a very good player at Kentucky. He was completely a project. The Heat knew. You got to credit Eric Spoelstra and the whole Heat organization for giving him time to develop, and it's really paid off because now Adebayo is probably their second best player and a huge part to this playoff team.
Yeah.
Moving on to number 4, Pascal Siakam of the Toronto Raptors. He's a stud, averaging over 23 a game, 3.5 assists, 7.5 rebounds. He started this season really strong, putting up 28 a game in the first month. I think he doesn't really have those star moments, but he still can be the number 1 option on the Raptors. He's a good defender, amazing athlete. He won Most Improved Player last year, and I was a little nervous if he was going to be able to improve, but he really has stepped into that number 1 role really nicely.
Yeah. I mean, the thing you said about, I was definitely nervous that he wasn't going to be able to improve after that second year, which was an amazing year. But without Kawhi, how would he handle a team with not much star power? He's done an amazing job, really overwhelmed my expectations. But like you said, I'm not sure he can improve much from here, but he has shot over 40% from the three-point line, and he dishes out the ball at a decent rate. He has a long wingspan. He can get blocks, get steals. So I think he's a really good player.
You guys have said that before. We've talked about this before, that Pascal Siakam has reached his peak potential. I mean, if this is his peak potential, I'll take it. This is still a great player, but I think that I gave the edge because on my list I had Siakam at 3 comparatively to Jason Tatum at 4, even though they have very similar stat lines. I just think I was definitely not expecting this Raptors team to be anywhere close to where they are, just in the wins category. And look at that big win streak they won on. That's a big credit. I'm not saying it's all because of him, but this team has stayed together, and I think that he's provided a lot of that help, and that's why they have more wins than a lot of other teams in the East.
I actually disagree with what you said earlier and what I said earlier this season. I think Siakam actually still has more potential in his game. He still has a lot of room to grow in his jump shot, can become better defensively, especially against guards. He can work on his playmaking. He can turn into a guy who can take the ball up the court, which we haven't really seen. But I think Siakam has that athletic potential. After watching him play this year as the first option, I really do think he can become maybe a top 10 player in the league, just based on how great he is and still how much of his game is based off his raw ability where he has room to improve.
Yeah, I agree with that. You just look at his body type, and he just resembles somewhat of the great players we have in the NBA now, like Giannis, with that huge wingspan, pretty big, and also a great ball handler. So I guess that takes us to number 3 with Jason Tatum. Their stat lines were shockingly similar. They're both averaging around 25, and I think they almost exactly the same in every stat line. But, the thing that maybe Siakam, I think, was better than Tatum in was he was consistent over the whole year, but Tatum really put it on towards the end of this shortened season. So that's why I kind of had him over the top, and he turned into a superstar scorer and also a really good defender, which he improved from last year.
Jason Tatum increased by 8 points a game average this year. That is incredible. I mean, yes, Kyrie left, but Kyrie was hurt for a lot of last year. He goes from 15 points a game to 23 points a game. We have seen Jason Tatum turn into a star. I don't know if I want to say overnight, but we thought it was going to be Kemba. Maybe it was going to be Gordon Hayward. Maybe it was going to be Jaylen Brown. Jason Tatum has solidified himself as, in my opinion, the best player on the Boston Celtics, and he will be for the next couple of years. I thought when Markelle Fultz was being drafted that Jason Tatum was the best player in the draft. I was pretty sure of it, and now here we are. I still think that to this day, Jason Tatum is a bona fide stud, and he still has room to improve.
Yeah, I agree. Jason Tatum, throughout his first 3 years before the month of March this year, he always had those flashes where you're like, this guy's game looks a little bit like Kobe. This guy can D up. He's a good shooter. He's so mature for his age, and he has that ball handling ability, even though he's a tall guy. Then this February, he averaged 30 a game on almost 50% shooting. He took that number 1 role when Kemba was hurt, and even with Kemba back in the lineup, he's been their best player. I think he's a great player. He plays a crucial position. He's a small forward, but he can ball hand. He can D up. I'm not saying he is Kobe, but there are games where he looks like it.
Yeah, that's for sure. His perimeter defense has been shockingly good this year, which is really the reason I had him over Siakam. And, I think he has a lot of room to grow. He definitely looks like a future MVP to me.
I mean, don't forget, this guy's a beast on defense, averaging 1.4 steals a game, 0.9 blocks. Like, he's everything that you're asking for and more, and it's only been his 3rd year. That's scary to me. Moving on to number 2, we've got Anthony Davis. I mean, Anthony Davis averaging 26.7 a game, 9 rebounds, 3 assists. This guy is an absolute superstar. He does everything that the Lakers have asked him to do and more. It would have been really disappointing if this trade hadn't worked out for the Lakers. Obviously, it did. I think the Pelicans got what they wanted. The Lakers got obviously what they wanted. This guy is an absolute beast. I think that he could have run a team by himself, even though he had a team by himself. But him with LeBron is an unbeatable combination.
They're a perfect pairing. They balance each other's game out so well. Anthony Davis, or they allow each other to do what they want, but Anthony Davis, I think there's a stat where LeBron, the most assists from one player to another is LeBron to Anthony Davis, and that stat is by far the most in the league. He's been shooting the 3 actually pretty well this year, his best of his career. He's averaging 2.5 blocks per game, so he's a sleeper defensive player of the year candidate. Maybe not a sleeper, he's a candidate. And just what he brings offensively, even though he might not be their number 1 option, he's definitely that sidekick. He has that post game. He's been able to extend his range. I love him, and I love this Lakers team with him.
Yeah, the best thing about him to me is how well he fits with LeBron, because we all know this is LeBron's team. This is not Anthony Davis's team. You can obviously see it when LeBron leaves. They're just not as good. So would you guys say that he can lead a championship team on his own?
I mean, it remains to be seen, but I think going back to your point, Nick Friedman, I think he is the defensive player of the year. 1.5 steals a game, 2.5 blocks a game. This guy's an absolute baller. And I think if you put him in the spotlight, especially in LA now, with the responsibilities that have been put on him with the championship team and the second best team, just based off winning in NBA history, I think if the lights were shining the brightest, I think he could 100% with the roster that he has and the coaching and the staff around him, I think that he could turn into a guy in the playoffs who honestly potentially could average like 33, 15 rebounds, 3 assists. This guy could be an absolute monster if you gave him 40, 45 minutes a game. This guy's a beast. He's so talented. He's good on every single side of the ball. He's so hard to guard because of his size and the way he moves. He's just not like any big man that we've ever seen before. Similar to Kevin Durant and Giannis, they just don't move like other big men do.
Also, with Anthony Davis, what you're saying, can he lead on a team on his own? Obviously, he couldn't with the Pelicans, but let's say you throw him onto the Celtics right now. I think they could win an NBA championship. And even though they have that stacked roster, Anthony Davis is their best player. So I wouldn't say he can carry a team, but you throw him on a good team where he is the best player, I'd say they absolutely could win a championship.
On a team like the Celtics, I think that'd definitely be possible. That would be an absolutely stacked roster.
Just give him the ball down low, honestly, or anywhere. Just give him the ball.
Yeah.
Yep.
Moving on to number 1, the reigning MVP, this year's MVP. You heard it here. Well, not officially, but he will be. Giannis Antetokounmpo. He's averaging almost 30 points a game, 6 assists, almost 14 rebounds a game, which is ridiculous. He's one of the best defenders in the league. Still doesn't have that jump shot, but he can play baseline to baseline in like 4 different steps. He'll just dunk it. He's one of the best drivers in the league, has an amazing post game. He's incredible.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, for me, it's for Giannis, it's just he has something to prove this year. I think he is not put in he's kind of in his own tier, separated from the Lakers and the Clippers. People still don't trust Giannis. People still don't think that him and the Bucks are contending for an NBA championship. So I think he has something to prove in the playoffs. And if they do end up happening, I think Giannis could go absolutely insane, which he did in the regular season, but still in the playoffs.
I think it's horrifying that he just goes as hard as he can every single night. Like, I am terrified of, like, if I'm an NBA player, if I'm the Clippers, because the Clippers just, they half-ass it sometimes. They rest. They're just trying to get to the playoffs. Giannis is going as hard as he can every single night. It makes you scared when he gets hurt, but his field goal percentage lowered this year, but only because he's shooting way more. His stats are unbelievable and unprecedented. He just goes through tears where he's averaging like 40 points a game, 20 rebounds. Are you kidding me? He's an absolute animal. He's the reigning defending MVP, similar to like what Russell Westbrook did, or not Russell Westbrook, Steph Curry. But this year, I can't even think of anybody else. Maybe LeBron, but I might argue, I wouldn't win, but you could argue unanimous MVP just because of what he did last year comparatively to how he improved this year.
And MVP candidates so good this year.
Yeah, Giannis could be Defensive Player of the Year. Also,
100%.
There's
100%.
Definitely an argument there. I'm really sad we're not going to be able to see him in the playoffs. At least it's likely that way. Because it would have been fun to see Mad Giannis with something to prove going against these other Eastern teams and then going against either the Lakers or the Clippers. That's just fun basketball right there.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. All right, well, I think that's going to close it up. Johnny?
That's going to close it up for this video. Like, share, subscribe this video. Tomorrow we're going to be finishing the saga, finishing with the centers, but then we're going to be moving on because you guys got us to 100 subscribers. We're going to start in the top 50 NBA players of all time. No, you guys are really excited to start doing that list, but make sure you can get us to 200 subscribers so I can shave my head. Really excited about that. Going to donate my hair to Wigs for Kids. But with that all said and done, hope you guys have a great rest of your day, and hope you enjoyed the video.
Yeah. Thank you for listening.
Thank you.
We'll be back tomorrow.